interpreter is fatally flawed. 8 fatal flaws, to be exact. Fatal because if I read as a large language model one more time, I was going to on the with the in its. So I decided to create my own personal code interpreter with this incredibly useful and free app. Hey there, it is I versus AI. What is this magical app of which I speak? It's called Obsidian. Obsidian is a note-taking app. Think of it like Notion. Some of you may have heard of this app, particularly if you are in academia. Obsidian is very well known and has a large and vibrant community. It's basically a front end for a folder full of markdown files called a vault. And one of the best things about Obsidian, and what makes it so much better in my opinion than Notion, is that it is extremely customizable and it's free. Completely free for personal use. But what about commercial use? If you are a solopreneur, just one person, then Obsidian is free. You only need to pay if you are a for-profit company of 2 or more people. So for those solopreneurs out there, like myself, you can use Obsidian for free. Obsidian runs on practically everything. It runs on your phone, iOS and Android. It runs on your desktop, Windows, Mac, and Linux. But what's really the icing on the cake for Obsidian are its plugins, of which there are currently over 1,000. There are so many plugins, 2 of which I'm going to be showing you right away, that will allow us to use our own code interpreter in Obsidian. But there are so many more. You can customize Obsidian to your heart's content. You don't need to. In fact, you can run this code interpreter very simple by creating a vault, opening it up, and installing, as I said, just 2 plugins. So let's get started. When you first open up Obsidian, you're going to be greeted with this vault chooser. We'll click Create, and will be asked for a vault name and a location. A vault, though a fancy name in Obsidian, means nothing more than a folder full of markdown files that are offline. You don't need to go into the cloud at any point, and they are on your computer. I'll give you a very quick and dirty overview of Obsidian, but there are much better channels on how to use Obsidian. The channel I recommend is Nicole Vanderhoeven, who does a wonderful job of explaining how Obsidian works and all the deep dives that you can do with it. As always, there will be a link to everything I mention in this episode in the description below. When you open up Obsidian, on the left-hand side, you will see here your file chooser, files and folders go here. We don't have any right now, so it's empty. On the right-hand side, you can expand this second panel. Obsidian is very customizable, and you can move buttons around as you wish. In the bottom left-hand corner is the settings gear icon. Click that, and there are a few changes I suggest that you make. Under appearance, I'm going to change the font size here to 18 to make it easier to see. There's also a dark mode and a light mode as well too. You can also theme Obsidian. There are quite a lot of themes available. Over here are community plugins. When you click into this section, you're going to be met with this screen. This is a warning from Obsidian letting you know that plugins only undergo an initial code review. Afterwards, developers can make changes to the code which could possibly cause problems. All of the plugins that I am going to recommend to you and that I use work perfectly. I've never had a problem. You want to stick to plugins that are popular and vetted by the community. As you can see here, they have a large community of developers that watch out for each other. Turn on community plugin. Now we're going to browse plugins and type in text generator. This is the first plugin we will need to communicate with GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 through the OpenAI API. Let's click it. When you click into a plugin, you'll see here a description for the plugin, which I highly encourage that you read to find out how it works. The TextGen plugin also has additional documentation. What I want you to take note of here is the GitHub page. Every plugin has an associated GitHub page. This is important in case you need help. There are 2 ways in which you can get help for the text generator plugin. 1, the Discord server, which is the way that I recommend. But also here under issues, if you have any problems, head over here and create a new issue. Plugins are very easy to install in Obsidian. Just hit the install button and then the Enable button. Now, head into Options. This is where you're going to put your API key. The developer has done a great job here by including a link which will take you directly to where you can create an account for OpenAI's API. Here's a note. If you are a ChatGPT Plus user and you are paying your $20 a month, that is an entirely different payment than the OpenAI API. To create an API key, you'll head over here and click Personal in the top right. Once you're on the API screen here, you'll be able to create as many API keys as you need. As you can see, I have one called Obsidian. You'll also need to set up a payment method. When you put your key in here, you won't be able to see it. If you want to see it, just press this button. For the purposes of this, I'm going to use GPT 3.5 Turbo to show you that if you don't yet have access to GPT-4, you can still use GPT 3.5 Turbo for the use cases that I will show you. These are the standard settings, and they seem to work just fine for our use case. We're going to keep streaming off, but later on I will show you what happens when it's turned on and the advantages and disadvantages. Make sure you have Show Status and Status Bar on. I'll show you why in a moment. One of the neat and I don't think well-known things about Text Generator is that it comes with extractors. That means that you can drop a link in to a web page, a YouTube video, some audio, an image, a PDF, and it will extract the text, and it does it very well. Down here, you want to make sure you have Generate Text clicked on, which it is by default. There's one other button I recommend that you turn on, and that's this text extractor tool, because the text extractor feature that I just showed you won't work unless that is ticked on. Now let's head back to our community plugins and install our second plugin to get our code interpreter set up. This plugin is Execute Code. In the description of the plugin, there's some neat little GIFs here that will show you how it works. But the important thing that I wanted to show you is this. With Execute Code, you are now free to use any of these languages. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we'll be using Python. Enable it and hit the option. In the options, there's only one option you need to change, and that is here. Click here, head to Python, and in this box, you'll need to input your Python path. I have included a link to this video, how to install Python the right way, in the description below if you need a little bit of help installing Python. It's not hard at all to do. I have Python installed on my C drive in a folder called Python 3.11 because I have Python 3.11 installed. I'm going to click into that folder, hover here over python.exe, hold down the Shift key here in Windows 10, right click and choose Copy as Path and paste it here into the box. But you'll need to make two changes or this won't work. 1, remove the quotes, and 2, change the backslashes to forward slashes, because if you don't, your Python will not work in Obsidian. I don't know why you need to do it that way, but indeed you do. Now we are ready to get started. We're ready to start using our own personal code interpreter. You head up here and you just click New Note, and a note opens up. You can then title it whatever you'd like, and at this point you can start talking to GPT. A couple of things. Down here in the corner, you'll see this little robot. This is how you'll get back and forth to the text gen settings. 2, the amount of tokens that you have available for output is here. This number can be changed. Now you're in your note and you can simply start talking, just like you would to Code Interpreter. I'll just say, how are you? A quick and very important note at this point. Where your cursor is determines what text is sent to the model. If your cursor is at the end of a line like this, then the line itself, nothing more, is sent. If your cursor is on a blank line, the entire note, no matter how long, is sent. If you've selected text and your cursor is blinking right there on an empty line at the end of a selection, then just the selection will be sent. This is an important thing to remember, because if you're not getting back what you want, it may be because your cursor is here and the model is just receiving that one line. Now, let's chat. Here's how you do it. Over here in this column are where you'll frequently see commands that can be run. Here is a simple generate text icon. Click this and there you go. That's your own personal code interpreter responding to you. The first tip I want to give you for your prompts is how important it is to ask it to give you code in a code block. A code block is the same thing that you see here in ChatGPT. This is nothing more than a markdown code block. A code block is created in Markdown when you type 3 backticks, the key directly to the left of your number 1 key, 1, 2, 3, and then the name of the language that you will be working with, in this case Python, then a space, and then to finish off the code block, 3 more backticks, and then enter. You'll know you have done so when you see this Python here, and it also doubles as a copy key, the same as you see for text in ChatGPT's window. Asking your personal code interpreter to output its code in a code block is essential for working with the Execute Code plugin. Let's generate this and see what we get. And there we go. There's our first code returned. The model has correctly indicated that this is Python code. Now, how do we run this? Over here in the top right, you will see this button that says Reading and Editing. We're currently in the editing view. To run this code, we'll simply click this button to change it to the reading view. And you can no longer see the Python indicator, but when you put your mouse over this code block, you'll see that. That is the Execute Code plugin in play. Let's click it and see what happens. Yes, it worked. You can see the output here. When you hover over it, you can clear the output or you can run it again. This is also where you will get error messages, which I'll show you how to deal with later on. Now, let's get to some more advanced and some fun stuff by doing this scrape of...
This is going to be rather undignified.
Julia Child's Wikipedia page.
I want to see if that is flippable. When you flip anything, you just have to have the courage of your convictions. Well, that didn't go very well.
We're going to take everything on this page and have it nicely formatted as a markdown file that we can put right into our Obsidian vault.
And I lost the handle off that basket. I'll dump it out.
The prompt is, please scrape this Wikipedia article and neatly format it in Markdown, including headers and subheaders, and save it as a Markdown file. Use the Wikipedia API. When the model is writing code, it might take a couple of seconds for something to show up, and you'll see this indicator here going for quite some time. It does eventually show up. I will show you later on with the streaming option how to make it so that you can see the code coming up, but there is a small disadvantage with that. So I do recommend using it without streaming, at least to get yourself started. If you are just running Python for the first time, while you're first using Code Interpreter, you will need to install libraries in order to run this code. If you don't have these installed, you'll get an error. To install libraries and packages in Python, it's really easy. On your desktop, with nothing selected, simply hold down the Shift key again and right-click. You will see Open PowerShell window here. Click that, copy the text here. If you hit Run, it won't work. This will not work. Just simply grab the text. You don't need the exclamation point, the pip, install, and whatever the library or package name is. Control V, paste them here into PowerShell and hit enter. And if you already have them installed, you'll see requirement already satisfied. You'll notice that when I hover over this, the Run button is here, even though we are currently in the editing mode. And that is because Execute Code includes a neat little trick. I'm going to click here inside the code, and you'll see when I'm clicking that I can't change the code, but it can still be changed. At the bottom of the code block, position your cursor and simply press the up arrow key. That will take you back into the code block and you can make any changes. What I've done in order to have that code block button, Run button, show up here in editing mode is right here. Instead of saying Python, I've said Run-Python. When you click outside of the code block again, down here, it'll turn into this colorful text and you'll get this Run key. Now, let's run it. I was expecting this, and I wanted to use this example to show you what to do when you receive error codes. If you don't know what the error is about or how to fix it, all you need to do is to copy it and paste it, and making sure you're in editing mode, just place it right here. Move your cursor to a blank line so that it takes all of this as context and simply ask the generator. I'm going to clear this though because I know what Wikipedia's API is asking for. It's asking for identification. And here in the results page is the first output from my personal code interpreter. Let's see how it looks. I'm going to drop this right into Obsidian and it shows up here. Look at that. That is awesome.
Voila.
Let's move on to example number 2. This is a real life problem that I had recently. I attended a Twitter space and I wanted to get the audio from that Twitter space. I used an app I found online, but it gave me this 2-hour long AAC file. And I couldn't use this in my editing software. I wanted to have this converted to MP3. I went online and I looked around and people said that Audacity could do it, but it kept crashing my Audacity. I decided to ask my new personal code interpreter to convert this AAC file to an MP3. In order to use this particular conversion, you will need to install FFmpeg, which is why I will give you a link to this video which will help you get FFmpeg installed on Windows 10. And the results are completed, and here is our MP3 file, 2 hours and 24 minutes long. Now I'm going to take you into my vault. This is the I versus AI vault. Let me give you a quick little tour. You can see here that my folders are colored and have these icons. These are 2 different plugins which allow you to change your folder colors here and add the icons. In my AI folder here, I have a subfolder called CodePads, and I'm going to be showing you this CodePad here. This CodePad contains a watermark image script, but this code is not code that was written by my personal code interpreter, by GPT. In fact, it is from the Python mini projects GitHub. I wanted to show you this example to show you that not only are you free from the ChatGPT code interpreter experience, but you're also free to be able to use different code that you find out on the internet, import it into your notebook and run it from there, or even have Code Interpreter improve the code. I simply copied the code here, pasted it into my CodePad, then gave my personal code interpreter instructions. First, let's enable streaming. I'm going to head down here to the little robot to get to the text generator settings. Scroll down and click streaming on. And now let's send that request. Up here, I have an editing toolbar. I have added this stop stream button, and I moved the text generator button from here over here. Now I'm going to generate text. You can see the code is starting to come through. If I hit the button, it simply stops it. The problem with streaming is that streaming happens so very quickly, as you can see, that sometimes the cursor jumps ahead of itself and ends up dragging words ahead of it, and you get code that isn't correctly indented and you'll get errors. The image I'm going to watermark is the thumbnail from my previous video, and the watermark I'm going to use is the I versus AI logo in orange. Case in point on the streaming not being effective, I got this error when trying to run the code. And here is my watermarked image with the watermark in the lower right-hand corner. If you wanted to change up this code, all you'd need to do is ask your code interpreter to simply make changes. For example, remove the background, black background, from this watermark image before placing it on this larger image. So here are the results from our 3 different code pads: the watermarked image, the MP3 file, and the markdown file of Julia Child. Having your own personal code interpreter is amazing. Now, I promised to share with you a little tip about long-term memory with your code interpreter. Here is how you do it. We're going to expand the right panel over here, and you'll see right here that I have something called Copilot installed. Copilot is a fantastic plugin by Logan Yang. It's a free and open source ChatGPT interface right in your Obsidian vault. It also has a great design and it is very easy to use. Here you can choose the default model. I'm using GPT-4. You'll put in your API key. But the cool thing is here, vector-based QA settings, no context limits. That basically means that you can have a code pad with code and text, and the text can be as long as you would like, and you'll be able to query it. If you use the Cohere AI trial API key, your embedding is free. Once you've created a Cohere account and made an API key, select it here from the drop-down, add your API key here, and you can make vector databases as long as you want, and it does not cost a dime. In order to query your note, here, you'll simply change the mode to Q&A active note. You'll get vector store created successfully, and now you can ask your note question. I have placed the entire transcript of my last video here in the note. And that video started out with Matt Wolf talking about something in a Twitter space. Let's find out if GPT-4 can see that in this note. In this note, who spoke in a Twitter space recently? Matt Wolf spoke in a Twitter space recently. That's correct. We can also ask GPT-4 about this code, and we get a correct answer. Looking at my AI second brain, this vault and this code pad is so empowering. I love feeling empowered, but I also like to have fun with AI as well. And that's why I recently decided to ask ChatGPT's code interpreter to get stupid with code. I show you 7 fun use cases to get silly and maybe learn something in the process with this video on screen right now.